Hey BookTube, it's Charlie from Reader Turned Writer, and today I am doing my April 2018 wrap-up. So just to start with a few stats really fast, I read 7 books in April for a total of 2,649 pages. I didn't donate any books last month and I did buy 7, so my library is growing, yay. I also did not DNF any books. I was able to finish all the books that I started. Of the books that I read, 6 were by female authors and only 1 was by a male author for some reason. I read 4 5-star books, 2 4-star books, 1 3-star book, and no 1 or 2-star books. I read 1 classic, 2 fantasies, 1 romance, 1 historical fiction, and 2 non-fiction, both of which were actually parenting type books. 1 of them was from the library, 2 of them I owned the hardcover for, 3 of them were ebooks, 1 was an audiobook that I listened to with my husband, and only 1 was from my 2018 TBR list. So the first book I read was actually one of the rereads. It was The Help by Kathryn, Stockett. I had lent this out to my mother-in-law and I was over there at their house and everybody was busy and I'd forgotten my book and my phone, so I didn't have anything to read and my kids were happily playing with cousins. So I was looking through the bookshelf and I saw this and I decided I'd start rereading it while I was there, and then I just couldn't put it down even as a reread. I absolutely love this book. The plot is set in the 60s in Mississippi, US during like the whole civil rights movement, and it focuses on 3 main characters. There's 1 white woman that's just fresh out of college and is a writer and really wants to become a serious writer, and then there's 2 black maids that it follows as well. The characters in this are all so memorable, even the side characters, they're all so memorable and fleshed out, and you just either love all of them or the ones that you don't love you absolutely hate. And it discusses a lot of really deep issues like stillbirths, and there's, you know, neglect and child abuse, there's spousal abuse, there's obviously the friction between the whites and the blacks in this era. It also just has a lot of not quite so serious issues but that still kind of tug at your heart, like romances and friendships and all of these loyalties and different things like that, and I absolutely love everything about this book. The history in it is really good, but it's also kind of a side story to the story about the women that it's following, and I love the stories of all 3 of the women, and I absolutely love the main character, Aibileen, because she is so strong and courageous, and her relationship with the little girl in this book as a mother just really touches my heart. Makes me sick to see that poor little girl and what she has to go through and with her mother, and I just, it pulls at my heartstrings a lot, and so I really love this book. I definitely recommend it, especially if you are interested in the civil rights movement or in historical fictions at all, or if you really like contemporary, you would probably really like this book as well. Next, I listened to The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. This was recommended to us as a book that was similar to Brandon Sanderson, had kind of the same kind of feel as a Brandon Sanderson book, and it didn't disappoint for the most part. Especially at the beginning, it really did feel very Brandon Sanderson-esque. We started listening to it and we were like, yeah, this is definitely something that I could have seen Brandon Sanderson writing, the plot and the world building and the magic systems in it and everything. I will say the further we got into the book, the less it was like that, and especially the ending. The ending was a little anticlimactic for us and not that surprising, I guess, which Brandon Sanderson's endings always kind of have a punch to them. And I've never been disappointed by an ending with Brandon Sanderson's books. And this ending, not that it disappointed, it just didn't really excite me either and make me go, wow. The epilogue did have a bit of a surprise, like a twist that I didn't see coming, so that was kind of fun. It's basically an epic fantasy. It's going to be a trilogy. There is the next book out and my husband and I are going to start listening to that soon. And then there's a 3rd book that's going to come out, I believe, later this year, but I'm not actually 100% sure on that. If you like epic fantasies or if you really like Brandon Sanderson, I would definitely give this a try because I think that you would enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. Next I read Balanced and Barefoot by Angela J. Hanscom, and this was my other reread. I read it on my phone for the 2nd time. I basically read it. This book is a parenting book that talks about how important it is to let your kids have free play outside for hours every single day, and really goes into depth about why it's so important and the benefits of it, and gives you a lot of ideas for how to make the most out of their free play and just different things like that. I reread it because I was basically feeling, since the move and the cold weather and being pregnant and morning sickness and all of that, that I just haven't gotten my kids outside very much, even though we've moved to an area where it's a lot easier to let them play outside, and they're also a little bit older. So I can kind of send them outside more on their own rather than being right there with them, especially with my youngest, now that she's almost 2 instead of being a year old, and kind of mostly has outgrown the phase of putting rocks in her mouth and stuff. But I reread it because I was really feeling like I needed the motivation to remember why I needed to send them outside and spend the time outside, with it being warmer and everything. It really did help with that. I definitely feel more motivated to get them outside, and I have a lot of ideas for what we can do with outside, and yeah, I really enjoy this book. I give it 5 out of 5 stars both times I read it, and I would highly recommend it to any parents, especially of younger children, but it also talks about older children as well. Then I read The Secret Garden by Frances Hodge Burnett. This is one that I've had on my phone for a little while. I must have gotten it free somewhere. And I've been wanting to read it. Here locally we have a live theater, and they recently put on The Secret Garden, the play, or the musical, and my husband and I went to it, so that was the perfect opportunity for me to have an excuse to read The Secret Garden on my phone and set aside some of the other books that I was working on. And I really loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars as well. It might be my new favorite children's classic, I don't know. I really loved it. It follows, I didn't know anything about it when I went into it, but it follows this girl who is living in India with her parents, but she's super spoiled. She never sees her parents. She just has a whole bunch of servants, and they just do whatever she wants them to. So she's spoiled and she never plays. Then her parents and a lot of the servants die, I think of scarlet fever maybe, and she survives, and she is sent to live with her uncle. And there's mysteries, like there's a secret garden that nobody's been in for 10 years since her uncle's wife died. There's a mysterious crying sound that she hears at night, and then there's people that she makes friends with, the servant and one of her brothers, and they send her out in the gardens all the time, and she jump ropes, and she learns to be a child, basically, becomes less spoiled, isn't as skinny, and fills out and actually starts eating, and learns the joy of growing things. And one of my favorite parts of this was just seeing her growth as the child, from going from one environment to the other, and seeing the benefits of all of the things that she went through, like having friends and being outside and different things like that. I absolutely loved seeing her character growth. I also really, really loved the friendship of the kids and watching that grow as well. It was really, really fun to see it, and to see them bond over the secret garden. It also has kind of a magic aspect to it, where the kids talk about and believe in magic all the time and different things like that, and nature's kind of magical, and I really, really liked that element as well. Then I read another one on my phone called The Little Cottage on the Hill by Emma Davies. This is one that I got recommended by BookTube, and it's a romance. I thought it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. It was well done. It didn't really jive with me for some reason. It was similar to a romantic comedy where there's like this high executive lady who always dresses nice and has her hair perfect, and then she gets sent out for some reason. She has to go out into like the wilderness or on a farm or something, you know, and her clothes are just not suitable for it at all, and she's a jerk to the owner of the farm, who she ends up, you know, falling in love with eventually, and you know, all of those like tropes. That's kind of what it was. And then she learns to love the farm and not to need to be so high maintenance and not be such a jerk and stuff. And honestly, it really annoys me when she's such a jerk. And like the first half of the book, she's just a jerk, and she's also alone most of the time. The second half of the book I enjoyed a lot more. Once it picked up, I really enjoyed it. Then I read How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk by Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. This is a book that I kind of accidentally bought. I was trying to buy a book written by Adele Faber's daughter called How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen, and somehow I ordered this book instead. and when it came, at first I didn't even realize it, but once I realized it, I decided it wasn't really worth the effort to try and send it back, so I just kept it and read it. And I'd read online that this book was really similar to the other book I was trying to order, but not quite as good. But I actually really enjoyed this. It was really similar to How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen. There were two main differences. It didn't focus on little kids. It talked about just kids in general, so it talked about teenagers and toddlers and everything in between. And it also wasn't as much of a story. In the other book, it kind of tells a story of like this group meeting together. And in this book, there was still a group that met together. They just didn't talk about it as much. They just shared stories from the parents of that group. So that might be a plus or minus depending on your style for nonfiction reading. I really loved the concepts in this book. I think that there are really important concepts and tools for parents to learn. And it was a really good reminder for me and had some new ideas in it for me as well, and so I'm really glad that I read this book. The last book that I read this month is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I just had to read it after all the hype on BookTube. Everybody was saying how much they loved this book, and I did enjoy it. I am not a huge fairy fan. Part of it is that they're just a little bit too cruel for me, and I know that that's how they're supposed to be and everything because it's fae culture and stuff, but I just, some of the stuff that they do in this book just twists my heart just a little too much, making it hard for me to read it. It wasn't too dark for me, but it was a pretty dark YA book. For some reason the writing style just didn't click with me as much either, especially the first half of the book. While I was reading it, it was fine, but once I'd set it down, when I tried to go back to reread it, it was like really hard for me to want to start reading it again, so then I turned to other books instead of to this one. So it actually took me quite a while to get through this book, even though it's not super long. And I don't know why that was. It was just when I was thinking about what I wanted to read, I never wanted to read this one for some reason. But once I got to the end, I finished it pretty quickly, and I did really enjoy the ending. The ending, in my opinion, is the best part of the book. I really enjoyed the intrigue, kind of the political intrigue, and the plotting and the scheming and figuring and the plans and following all of that. I really enjoyed that. Those are the main things that I really enjoyed about it. The political intrigue and plotting and all of that, and the ending I thought was just very, very good. It redeemed the book in my eyes from the beginning, which was harder for me to get into. I gave it 3.5 stars, although technically I gave it 4. I would have given it 3.5 if I could have on Goodreads. It was a book that I enjoyed, and I will probably read the sequel. It was not my favorite book though. So that was my reading month in April. It was not too bad. I did make a little bit of progress on the Count of Monte Cristo, but not a ton. I read mostly at the beginning and the ends of the month because in the middle I got into a huge reading and booktube slump, and so that's part of why I didn't make a lot of progress on the Count of Monte Cristo. I was trying to meet my 7-book goal. I have a goal to read 7 books a month this year at a minimum, and so I was really trying hard to reach that, and so I kind of set the Count of Monte Cristo aside because I'm still not even halfway through it. I'm still plugging away at that as well. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching my video, and I will see you in the next one.